Hi, I'm Elisa. It's been about 4 weeks since I posted anything, so I have some updates. First of all, I know I originally started this for my journey to an AuDHD or whatever diagnosis. And so I did all of those testing appointments. So I had one on Monday and then I had one yesterday. And so that's all wrapped up. And then I'll have my results appointment on the 2nd of February. So in like a week and a half, which is kind of exciting and nervous and all that kind of nerve-wracking and all that kind of stuff. But so I can tell you a little bit for those of you who are going through this or are thinking about doing the testing or any of that kind of stuff, if you kind of just want to know what to expect. So, originally, like I said, I had my initial interview with a psychologist, and she kind of just asked me a few questions, and it was like a 45-minute appointment, but really it was more so where she could just kind of figure out why I was getting referred or why I was seeking testing and to determine what tests, if anything, that they were going to do. So she at the time said that they were then going to test for ADHD, bipolar, and autism. So when I went in for the testing on Monday, it was scheduled to be about 3 hours or so, I think from like 1 to 4 or something. And I was kind of nervous because I didn't really know what to expect. They said that it was going to be more like questionnaires and stuff. So when I went in there, there was so I could tell the things that they were testing for, or what it seemed by the tests and the questionnaires that they gave me, were ADHD, bipolar, autism, anxiety, OCD, and I feel like there was one more, but who knows? So just kind of like a wide range of trying to cover everything. And one of the tests that we started with was on the computer. And so it would pop up different letters of the alphabet, just one at a time. And so I was supposed to press the space bar every time that a letter popped up, unless it was the letter X. If I see a letter X, I was not supposed to press anything. And so she gave me like a moment to sort of test it out and, just kind of like practice. And I was like, oh, this is super easy and this isn't going to show them anything until like the end of it. And I started accidentally pressing the X. And then, so she's like, okay, that was the practice. Now we're going to do the actual test. And she's like, this is actually, I'm going to set a timer. It's going to be for 14 minutes. And you are just going to do that. So sometimes the letters would be slow and just kind of like pop, in and out. Other times the letters would like go through really quickly. And it's funny because kept like working through all of these like plans in my head because I would accidentally hit the X and then I'd be like, okay, this time in my head, I'm going to like program my finger to be like, okay, I'm going to say the letter outside of my head, or I'm going to say it in my head. And then anytime I hear X, my finger will pause and I won't like press any buttons. And so I was trying to do that. I failed at that like every single time. I pressed so many X's. And then I found it was actually funny because the times that I did the best seemed to be when they were like the fast letters, because I think then it like stayed fresh in my brain, like what I was doing, and I could kind of get into a rhythm and a pattern. But if not, if it was kind of the spaced out, then I would get in my head about like, okay, well, we haven't had an X for a minute. The next one's probably going to be an X. And so I would start like planning and then something would pop up and I press the button and then it would be X. So, anyways, that was that one. Then the rest were just a whole bunch of questionnaires. Some of them were either ones that I had to fill out or ones that like she would ask me the questions and then she would kind of jot her notes down. Um, so that one, it took really about like 2 hours or so. I like questionnaires and I like kind of getting I like efficiency. And so we knocked those out. Then she said that my appointment for yesterday was going to be more of like conversational to try and like find out like my experience and my past and all of that kind of stuff. So I was kind of excited for that one because I was like, okay, well, the questionnaires don't necessarily tell them everything, so I was kind of looking forward to like, okay, I can tell a bit more of like my story and kind of like what led me here or, like things that I've kind of struggled with in my past or whatever. And but I wasn't like that at all. So, so when I got in there, it was more, it reminded me of my daughter. Like I said, my youngest daughter has Down syndrome. And so she's been in therapies since she was younger. And so they always have to do kind of like these reestablishing of like where she is on different things. And so it'll just be like these huge, book. I think it was the ADOS 2 or something is what it said. But so it's just kind of questions, and she would write down my answers to those questions. Um, but I didn't really like the questions because they were too broad. And like for instance, you get in there and you already don't really know what to expect. And you're kind of in your head and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to screw this up and I'm not going to answer right. And she's going to say, no, you don't have anything. And which is fine, but I just want to know. And but like the first question she starts with is there anything that makes you angry? And I'm like, I don't know. Or are there things that people do that annoy you? And I'm like, I'm sure there's lots of stuff that people do that annoy me, but when you put me on the spot, my brain goes blank and I can't think of one of them. And so then I came up with some very like generic things like, oh, people who drive slow, or which, yes, that does bother me. And it turns to like pull out I don't really have Tourette's, but it pulls out like my inability to like keep um, my language nice. Um, but so yeah, so it was just a lot of like those kind of questions, like what makes you angry and what makes you happy and how do you feel when you're happy? And tell me about your like marriage. Why do people get married? Why do you think people get married? What and just all this kind of stuff. Um, so so sure, I kind of answered the questions, but I also felt like there were so many things that after leaving the appointment, I'm like, oh, well, I should have said this and this and this. And so that was kind of annoying because for me, when I get put on the spot, I go blank. And so it's almost like it would have been nice if they kind of would have given you the questions beforehand. So I could have sort of like worked through it in my head and already started like not so much like figuring out the answers, but like processing that like this is what's going to be asked of me so that I can kind of like go in my brain and try and figure out like how I feel about those things. Um, so after we did those questions, then she's like, okay, well, now we have some silly games. And she's like, and they're probably going to seem like they're, way younger than you and just kind of go with the process. Like, that's not what it's for. And so I think it was just to kind of see how my brain works, I guess. I don't know. And so the first one was a book. And so it was like a children's book. And she said it's different than most books because I think it maybe had like 8 words in the whole book. And the rest of it was just pictures. And so she started out by telling me like what was happening on the first page. And then I was supposed to go through and continue and like finish the story. So that was fine, except again, that kind of was a little frustrating because, again, being put on the spot, I have difficulty. And so I am a writer. I love to write. I love to tell stories and use my imagination and kind of let it go or tell my girls' stories or, like my one daughter, we used to play. There was a movie that she really liked. And so we would be like those characters and go into this like imaginative land and all this kind of stuff. And so I have a very creative imagination. However, it might take a little bit to kind of warm up. And so again, that was just kind of frustrating because I was like, well, it's not really a true measure of kind of how my brain works. Um, and then the next thing was she had a bag with just some random objects. And so she pulled out 5 of them and she's like, okay, I'm going to make up a little story with these objects. And then she had me pick out like 5 other random objects from the bag and then had me tell a story, which again was kind of dumb because my object choices were like a plastic airplane, one of those little, like it was a tiny little, almost for like dolls, where it was like the, what's it called? Like where you were going to do work for a house, like a contractor or like construction. And so it's like the little thing with all the tools that go in it. Yeah, I'm sure I know that name, but I'm blanking on it right now, so whatever. Um, so it was like that, the plane, this little square hard foam, or not foam, like hard sponge, and then a little one of those like balls that are like a small orange. It's kind of just spiky all over it. And then what was the last thing? A popsicle stick. And so I had to come up with a story. And again, kind of dumb because I just went off of what I'd been like most focused on recently, which I've been like watching so many like near death experience stories and kind of like spiritual journey stories and all of that kind of stuff. And so that's sort of where my story ended up kind of taking me. But again, later I was like, okay, I could have made that story so much better. Um, but whatever. And and yeah, so that was it. That was that appointment. That one took like a little less than an hour, but I did take with me all of my papers of all of the research that I had done. And so I took that and I was told to that they would kind of copy that or scan it in and then send it off to her so that when the first person who evaluated me, she's going to get all of the information for like the 2 days of testing, plus all of the stuff that I sent, and then like her own stuff. And then she will work out the report. And if there is a diagnosis, she'll give that. And then kind of just like an analysis for each of the different tests. So I'll get those results on the 2nd of February. So like a week and a half or something. So really, it's not that long. And I'm pretty excited, nervous. I don't know, because my mom's like, well, what if they come back and they say that you don't have anything? She's like, are you going to be okay with that? And I'm like, yeah, like, I just want to know. I'm not like sitting here trying to so much like pinpoint that like I want this or I want that. Like it's more I just want the answers. Like I just want to understand myself and my brain and try and figure out like ways that like work best for me. And if I can understand kind of like the chemical makeup of my brain and how it's actually functioning, then it can allow me to sort of like, I don't know, be better, whatever. I don't know. So yeah, so that was that journey. And so again, I will have those results soon. And and yeah. So that was just that update. I just wanted to give that. And then I'm not really going to be doing a lot of videos necessarily like focusing on like whatever the diagnosis necessarily is. Originally, that's kind of why I started is I was like, okay, I want to know all about this and I wanted to kind of like find out a bunch of information, but I was really struggling to find like content creators who had similar journeys. And so when I did find someone who had similar journeys, like it was inspiring and made me feel sorry. There's like one hair and it's really annoying me. Um that that it just helped me. It helped me kind of feel less alone. It helped me understand myself a little bit better. And so that was kind of originally what I had planned to do. But then the more I thought about it, and yes, it's kind of interesting, and I was totally hyperfixating on everything having to do with ADHD and all of that kind of stuff. But just like all of my hyperfixations, it dwindled. So, not so much that I'm not interested in that anymore, but that's not going to be like my only focus of everything. And plus, really, I think the content is still really helpful. I still watch a lot of people's videos and I still love hearing about it and kind of like seeing and getting those like moments of like, oh yeah, that explains this, or different things like that. However, I've also come to the realization that just because I am currently working through this at my age and at this time doesn't mean I know everything or that I really have that much information to share with people because I'm still trying to figure it all out. And so I kind of felt like a fraud a little bit, like not really a fraud, but like there's so many other people who have so much more knowledge on all of this that really I don't want to come in and try and like preach or teach or any of that kind of stuff, that instead I I figured, what might be most helpful is just kind of like my channel's name and on the mind goes, is that my brain goes every certain way, every way. And, that it might be helpful to just kind of get more of that like lived experience of like, here's what I think about or go through or whatever, but not so much like just focused on I'm making a channel that's going to focus on like AuDHD or bipolar or whatever it may be. Because I feel like there's so much more to me also, and to explore and to talk about. And, this might be like a piece of myself that I'm trying to get answers to, but it's not all of myself. And so yeah, so that's kind of where that is. And I hadn't really posted in like a month, and mostly because we were it was Christmas and then Christmas break. And then my husband was home and my girls were home because they're on Christmas break. And I get very self-conscious. And so, like, even though I'm here and I'm like speaking my truth and all of that kind of stuff, like, I still feel weird when like my girls or my husband are in like the next room over and they get to listen to me because I just feel like self-conscious. And so a lot of that then like I didn't record videos during that time. And so like right now, these are like the perfect times because my husband's at work and my girls are at work. Nope, they're not. They're at school. And so it allows me to kind of just talk. Um, and then after Christmas, we ended up going to, which this could be a different thing, but we ended up going to Disney World. And so we were there until the recently. And so we just got back last week. And so obviously I wasn't doing like videos and stuff while we were at Disney, though I could talk about a lot of things that happened at Disney and how that kind of experience went, because that is a big place where you like see my shutdowns and I really struggled, at least the first few days. I really struggled with just the overwhelm in the crowds and different things like that. And so it took me a few days to relax, plus like having some drinks and stuff like that helped to kind of just not be in my head as much. But but yeah, okay. So I'm just gonna end it there because that's what I do. And I'll pick up on another video. So thank you for watching and listening. And if you have any questions or comments or whatever, then let me know. And I look forward to hearing your story or stuff. Okay, bye.